What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Gaming 101 with Mr. Berger. Tonight we're going to take a look at the deck that I used in the Triple Elixir Challenge. Now I went 6-1 with this deck, so I did pretty well. It only takes 6 wins to complete this challenge, so I probably wouldn't have gotten the 12 wins in the 12-win challenge. Regardless, you only need 6 to win this one, and this deck worked out just fine for me. So, let's go ahead and take a look at each card. Now by the time you're watching this video, the Triple Elixir Challenge will probably have been over already, but I thought it would be beneficial for me to make a video on it regardless and showcase this deck because it worked out really well. And if you've been playing for a while, you'll likely know that this is not the first time that the Triple Elixir Challenge has rolled around, right? This is it's been here 3 or 4 times, if not more, by now. So we want to, or I would like to show this deck that I used for the next time that it rolls around, and just to kind of show you guys a successful way to do a really heavy deck in a really heavy challenge like this. So let's go ahead and take a look at each card, and then I'll talk about card replacements, and then I'll run through each replay. Now I'll run the replays in the background until I get there, of course, so that we have something to watch and some examples for me to use while I'm talking about the cards. So let's talk about our heaviest cards first. We got the P.E.K.K.A and we got the Mega Knight. Now the P.E.K.K.A, you definitely want to use the P.E.K.K.A and the Mega Knight as counter push cards. You're going to see a lot of really heavy units in this challenge because of the fact that you get triple elixir. You get 3 times the elixir at triple the rate. Or just at triple the rate, I should say. That's how you get 3 times the elixir. So you're going to see a lot of golems, you're going to see a lot of P.E.K.K.As, you're going to see a lot of Mega Knights, you're going to see a lot of lava hounds. Like so, you see a golem and a Mega Knight on the battlefield right now. Now P.E.K.K.A, I really like him because of the fact that you're going to see a lot of golems. People naturally are going to put golem in their deck because it's the heaviest tank. It goes really well in this really heavy challenge. P.E.K.K.A hard counters golem. P.E.K.K.A smacks golem really hard, and she just blows him up before he can get to the tower, usually, if you place him correctly. Either way, she does a ton of damage to him, right? She does a great job of shutting him down. So you use P.E.K.K.A to counter their heavy units, and then she goes up and counter pushes. Mega Knight plays a similar role. He lands with the Fury of 1,000 Mustaches, and he does AoE, or splash, or cleave damage, whatever you want to call it. And basically it means that he hits more than one target. When he lands, he also hits multiple targets with his auto attacks. So Mega Knight and P.E.K.K.A are your 2 main tanks. They're your heaviest units and your beefiest units, but they're mainly for counter pushes. That being said, once you get a push going, you can totally plop another Mega Knight or P.E.K.K.A in the front of your push to get multiple, what will we say, a few of them down. Multiple instances of them down, right? You get a couple P.E.K.K.As, a couple Mega Knights down, and they're just done for. Hopefully. In fact, we'll see a replay in a little bit here where I get 2 P.E.K.K.As down. So mainly you use the Mega Knight and the P.E.K.K.A to counter push and go for a big push. You can play them in the back behind your king tower to build up a big snowball or a big beatdown kind of thing, and that will get you the chance to, you know, just plow through them and destroy their princess tower and then go on to destroying their king tower. But that gives them more of a chance to kind of build up and set up and think about how they're going to counter your push. So I generally save those 2 heavy units for counter pushes by playing them on defense and then allowing them to cross the river and supporting them on a counter push. Now let's go ahead and talk about our 2 main support cards. We got the Executioner and we got the Electro Wizard. Let's talk about the Executioner first. So the Executioner is really good for a number of reasons. He does AoE damage, and he's a really beefy support card. He's got high HP. So he doesn't die to the combo of a fireball and a zap, or a fireball and a log, or a poison in any of those cheaper spells, right? Whereas a wizard or a musketeer, or an ice wizard or an e-wiz do die to those things. So he's got a little bit more health. He's also got good damage, and he's got AoE damage. He does cost 5, so he costs more than most support units. But considering this is the Triple Elixir Challenge, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that gives you more value. Alright, why don't I go ahead and move on to the next replay here so that I don't lose my train of thought. So the Executioner, you could replace him with a number of things. I like the fact that he's beefy though. I'll talk about card replacements a little bit later. Think about the fact of AoE, splash damage, because that plays a big role in this deck and allows you to kind of play defense and counter push really well. the Executioner does a good job comboing with your Tornado, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But before we get there, let's talk about the other major support card, which is the Electro Wizard, the E-Wiz. E-Wiz is good for a number of reasons as well. First of all, he's just a really strong card. He's been really strong since release. He has a very good counter-push potential because you play him on defense, he lands, and he does a bunch of damage, and then he runs up really quickly and does good auto-attack damage too. But the big benefit of the E-Wiz in this challenge is the fact that he stuns. He stuns when he lands, unlike the Mega Knight. Mega Knight does more damage when he lands, but he doesn't stun. The E-Wiz also stuns on every auto attack. So every time he shoots his lightning out from his hands and attacks them, he stuns them. Stuns the enemy units. Now why is that good? Well, he interrupts Inferno Dragon and Inferno Tower with those stuns. Now let's talk about that Inferno Dragon. Inferno Dragon you'll see a lot. You'll see it in most, if not all, decks in this challenge that you go up against. If you don't see that, you'll probably see an Inferno Tower, and if they don't have either, capitalize on that. Because those are the two major counters to heavy units, which you'll see a lot of. So since you're going to have a bunch of Mega Knights and P.E.K.K.As and, what will we say, Lava Hounds and Golems, you're going to have a lot of Inferno Dragons and Inferno Towers. So the E-Wiz counters the counter. So E-Wiz and Inferno Dragon are very staple in these decks. Alright, now let's take a look at this next deck. Take a look at his 3 Musketeer placement. 3 Musketeer could be great in this challenge, but he doesn't place them very well. He uses them all in the same lane and near the bridge. I would generally place them behind the King Tower or in between the Princess Towers and split them down the middle so that one goes down one lane and 2 go down the other lane. That way they're not as susceptible to AoE damage from spells and stuff. So the Inferno Dragon counters really heavy units. I highly recommend it in this deck. I wouldn't replace it with much else other than the Inferno Tower. So now that we've covered all our units, let's talk about our spells. Now let's talk about the cheapest spell first, and that is Zap. Zap is there for a reason. You want a cheap spell in almost every deck. If you're running one spell, it's probably the one cheap spell. It's probably Zap or Law. Cheap spells being, spells that cost 2, right? I guess you could say Arrows is a kind of cheap spell, but that's kind of non-meta right now as well. So Zap is there not only because it's a cheap spell, it does AoE damage, which synergizes with a lot of other stuff in your deck, but it also has that stun effect. And that stun effect is very vital in this challenge. It's very vital because it counters Inferno Dragon and Inferno Tower. And again, you'll see a bunch of those because you're going to see a bunch of really heavy units due to the fact that you get 3 times the amount of Elixir. So Zap is probably the best cheap spell to run in my opinion. I'm running Poison as my medium spell because it's really prevalent in the current meta. I see it a lot in a lot of decks. It's got a very high usage rate and a very high win rate. You can also potentially cycle, even though it's a really heavy deck, you can continually cycle to your Poison just because you get so much Elixir if you absolutely have to use that to finish off their tower. You could replace it with Fireball or something, but I'll get to that a little bit later. I just like Poison and it worked out for me, so hey, why change it, right? If it isn't broken, don't fix it. Now, why do I run Tornado? Tornado is huge. It's just such a strong card in any meta since it's been released. I mean, it's just... Ever since people figured out how to use it properly, it brought a whole new aspect to the game. It just allowed people to pull Hog Riders and any tanks, almost any melee unit, into the King Tower, thus activating it and allowing it to go into fights and shoot on the oncoming hogs and stuff from then on. Now, on top of that, it has a few other roles in this deck. As I mentioned earlier, you got a bunch of cleave or AoE or splash damage. So you Tornado everything together and then you zap it. That's a huge combo. It takes out minion hordes and all kinds of swarmy stuff. You Poison and Tornado, that works really well. You Tornado and then you land on top of everything with a Mega Knight. That'll just blow up their whole army with that, force of 1,000 mustaches, right? You can do the same thing with an Electro Wizard. Mega Knight is also a hard counter to the 3 Musketeers. You plop your Mega Knight on top like so, and he doesn't kill them instantly, but he brings them down to one-shot range, and then finishes them off with his auto attacks. So Tornado works really well for those reasons. It synergizes well in the deck. You can also Tornado stuff into your P.E.K.K.A, who's your hardest hitter in this deck, unless you count the Inferno Dragon charged up. And she will just smack them to death. Okay, let's take a look at this next one. Let's take a look at my final win, actually. And then I want to walk through these other 2 replays. Alright, I want to talk quickly about card replacements. So, Zap, you could replace it with Log, but I recommend Zap because of the stun. It counters Inferno Dragon and Inferno Tower. You'll see a lot of those because of the fact that you'll see a lot of heavy units. Tornado, you don't want to replace it with much. I highly recommend Tornado in this deck. It synergizes with a lot of things in this deck. If you have to replace it with something, possibly a defensive structure like a cannon, but I would probably go with like an Inferno Tower if you have that, because that would work out really well too. But again, if you have Tornado, even if it's low level, definitely run it. It's really good. Poison, replace it with another similar medium spell. Fireball's the obvious replacement. If you want to have some fun, you could totally put a Rocket or Lightning in there. Lightning isn't that great in the current meta. It got nerfed twice in the last 2 patches. So you can run it for the fun of it, because it is a fun card to play, but you might be better off doing like a Poison or a Fireball or even a Rocket. For the Executioner, again, he's kind of beefy. You could replace him with like a Bowler. Bowler will live through a Rocket, so that's a huge advantage to the Bowler. Look at that big push and how I just kind of annihilated his tower with the big snowball. Alright, so we'll start this next replay. If you don't want to replace the Executioner with the Bowler, then you could possibly replace him with, you know, any other support card, you know, the Musketeer, the Wizard. The Ice Wizard would work really well in this deck too, because it synergizes really well with Tornado. You could even replace it with like Archers or something like that if you don't have anything better. P.E.K.K.A and Mega Knight, I wouldn't replace them with much. They're both great counterpush and big tank cards. I use P.E.K.K.A to counter the big tanks like the Golem, but if you have to replace it with something, you could replace it with a big heavy counterpush card or a medium counterpush card like the Lumberjack and the Mini P.E.K.K.A recently both got buffed, so they might work out if you don't have the P.E.K.K.A or the Mega Knight available to you. But I would highly recommend running either of those. If you want to run a really big, heavy, tanky push deck, you could run a Golem in the place of either of those two, but I'm running these two to kind of counter those Golem decks. Inferno Dragon, the obvious replacement is Inferno Tower. I wouldn't recommend it if you have the Inferno Dragon because it has the potential to go on counter pushes and you build up 2 Inferno Dragons and they just annihilate a tower. But if you don't have it, then you could replace it with an Inferno Tower. If you don't have either of those, just replace it with another support unit, you know, a Musketeer or Archers, you know, maybe even Ice Wizard or something like that if you have it. Electro Wizard, I highly recommend Electro Wizard. Don't replace him with anything if you have him. He's pretty staple in this deck. If you don't have him, you could replace him again with any medium support card like Musketeer, Ice Wizard, Archers, you know, maybe even throw like a Swarm card like a Goblin Gang or something in there. But he's great because of his stun ability and his counter push ability and potential, so you probably don't want to replace him with much. I think that's pretty much all the cards. I talked about Mega Knight, I talked about Electro Wiz, I talked about Inferno Dragon. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. So let's talk about these replays here. Now this is a pretty long one. I definitely take a little while to win it. It goes into overtime. Alright, I got a big push going here. And after this one, we're going to take a look at my loss. I wanted to run that one before a win and not have it as my last replay. But since I blathered on for so long about all the cards, oh man, I won't get a chance to do that, so I'll have to run it as my last. But that's okay. So you can see the potential of the Tornado on defense there. What I'm trying to do here is build up a big push. I put the Inferno Dragon in down to counter the balloon and also to get a big push going. It's pretty hard for me to get through because he's got the giant skeleton and everything. The giant skeleton, I learned, is difficult to deal with because you play him on defense and then he dies, and then a few seconds later his bomb explodes and blows up your massive push. So you want to kind of put your support cards spread out a little bit if possible, like stagger them to the left and the right a little bit. They're eventually going to build up once they cross the bridge, but especially if they have like a tornado or something like that. But you know, if you can stagger them, then they'll be less susceptible to being hit by the same fireball or rocket or cleave from like an executioner or something. Okay, let's go ahead and watch this last replay. Alright, so this is a loss. Let's go ahead and see where I went wrong, what I could have done better. This is the one loss that I got with this deck. Again, this is only a 6-win, or yeah, a 6-win challenge. So after 6 wins, it was done. I highly doubt I would have gotten 12 wins because I'm not that great of a player. But, you know, maybe I could have gotten like 8 or 9 or something like that with this deck. Of course, all you need is 6 to complete the challenge, so it'll do. Now, I could have done a better play. I probably shouldn't have poisoned there. I think I was just trying to kind of cycle it out. I put my Inferno Dragon to try to counter his. I also zapped his Inferno Dragon. And like I mentioned earlier, Zap stuns the Inferno Dragon and tower, which interrupts it. Zap and Electro Wiz stun whenever they do damage, so they'll also stun and interrupt things like Sparkies, anything that charges up. So Sparky, Inferno Dragon, Inferno Tower, anything like that. Alright, right here I'm trying to build up a big push. He uses a Golem defensively. Interesting play. What he's doing there is he's trying to, distract all my stuff, and then he uses the Inferno Dragon to try to counter my heavy units. So I pull everything in. Actually, I think it's she, I should say, because the clan name is Chicas. Unless that's just the clan that they're in, right? Alright, they go for a big push. I'm doing alright at this point. So I'm trying to counter his golem, her golem, their golem, with my P.E.K.K.A. Works out pretty well. You can see the effectiveness of that there. Alright. They keep placing golems and stuff pretty offensively, aggressively now at the bridge, going for that big push. If you do place a golem at the bridge, it is kind of hard to deal with, even if you have something that, answers it really well. Especially in this challenge, see how much support they got built up with that golem. Even though I tornadoed it away, it still got to the tower. And golem does death damage, so even if he doesn't actually attack the tower, he'll explode and do some AoE damage on it. Alright, I try to build up a big push here. See how you can use that tornado offensively to try to pull all of their units together and then hit them with a spell, or also pull them into your P.E.K.K.A. and then allow your P.E.K.K.A. to swing on them and do a bunch of damage. Okay, so right now I gotta play defense a little bit. Things are looking okay for me at this point. But I know I go wrong somewhere. Unless I made a mistake and played the wrong replay. No, I'm pretty sure this is the one that I lose. Okay. So I'm going for a counter push here. Doesn't work out too well. She uses the E-Wiz to counter my Inferno Dragon. That's the whole point of it. You'll see the E-Wiz a lot. See how I pull them all together and then plot my E-Wiz on top of them? So Tornado plus E-Wiz or Tornado plus Mega Knight works out really well. At this point, maybe I'm thinking, oh, I can just cycle Poison. That's probably what I had in mind, as I mentioned earlier. But it's possible that I did it too early and allowed them to build up too big of a push, which cost me the game. Because this is Triple Elixir Challenge, you have the potential to build up these massive pushes. Okay. This is not looking so great for me at this point. You see that there's some damage going off on my tower. Now, they're running the Night Witch, and I think Night Witch would be another great unit in this meta for this challenge. She's a great support card. She's got all those bats. She did get nerfed like 3 times because she used to be super OP, but she's still pretty strong. She combos really well with the Golem. You could run like a Night Witch Golem clone deck. That would be awesome. That would be so much fun and still valid. And you can see they are lost because what happened is they just put up too much pressure. Gave me a well played. I appreciate that. I appreciate the positive, feedback at the end there. Or not really feedback, but just sportsmanship at the end there. So, run that Golem Night Witch clone deck if you want, because when Night Witch dies, she spawns bats. So you got 2 of them, both of them die, they both spawn bats, you got 1,000,000 bats. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate all your time. I appreciate everybody that has taken the time to watch videos, comment on them, and especially share them. Have a good night.
Yeah, but